screen. All right. Good morning. We are here with Kathleen Calby. Uh, I'm always trying to get everybody's last name correct because it sounds really weird when they correct you because you've gotten their last name wrong. So I always ask everybody before we start the interview, like, how do I pronounce your last name? Mine is super hard anyway, even though people say it sounds the same way it's spelled. But my last name is Ignatowski. So it can be a challenge when I get phone calls. They always give me something else. So always make sure that I ask. So Kathleen is here with us. She owns Resounding Joy. We were at Victory of Light together. I've seen her the last several times I've been at Victory of Light, and it was funny when I walked up to her booth. She remembered me from the time before, which was really good. I was there with my now fiance. Always really interested in. Kathleen talked about singing bowls. She has a business talking about sound healing and things like that, and it is just incredible. I have two myself. I've got one of them with me sitting here. I'm always playing with it and feeling that vibration that comes from the sound and finding one that resonates with you, which is really interesting because at her booth she has probably 30 or 40 singing bowls sitting on her booth that people can play with. So when you go to her booth, you can really touch them and feel them and hear them and really see what resonates with you, because there is that special tone that really gets to the heart of who you are. It's really, really interesting. So I'm going to have her talk a little bit about herself and then let us know more about that. Go ahead, Kathleen.
Okay, Jeff. Well, I just love the bowls. I've been playing them for 20 years now. And the reason I got into it at all, which everyone asked me, is why did you get into singing bowls? I was, even as a child, I heard these sounds that came out of nowhere, and they were very high pitched, but they were interested me, just intrigued me. And the one would just go through the temples right to left. The other one would come into my right ear at a little bit of an angle. And I just wondered what these were, and I was excited about them, so I started talking about them, and someone in authority said I should stop listening to them, and I shouldn't hear them, and I should stop listening. So I was a pretty precocious child, and I just thought, I'll just shut up about it, and that's fine. So I continued to listen to them, and they would come and go, and I just thought it was pretty magical. And then when I was 40 years old, I was sitting with a spiritual teacher one-on-one who said to me, so this is quite an expansive time from when I first heard them to this time I'm talking of now. And the teacher said to me out of the blue, "What do you think of those sounds you hear?" And we hadn't been talking about them or anything else. I was just stunned. And I thought, but now I can get my answer. So I said, I don't know. What should I think? And the teacher, being the perfect spiritual teacher, said, "I think you should listen." And that was the end of that conversation. So I started listening, but I also knew that the monks knew about sound from the singing bowls. That was very apparent to me, and I thought maybe this will help me in this pursuit. So I bought a singing bowl at an expo, much like Victory of Light, and it was so noisy in the expo, which happens when I'm showing bowls, that I couldn't hear it. But the Tibetan monks were selling it. I figured, okay, it's a good bowl, and I love the vibration in my hand. That's what I could feel. I could feel the vibration in my hand, and I bought the bowl. And when I finally got home, or that night, whatever, I could listen to it, and it was just beautiful. I just was mesmerized by it. So I would sit, play that bowl, and listen for the sounds to come. And I spent 10 years listening, literally 10 years listening. So that's how I got started with singing bowls.
Wow. So, it's amazing. We all have those things in our life that call out to us. And it is the people that becomes really self-aware that really take that and run with it and make it their life's work, right? And those are the people that ultimately really affect everybody around them, and they have positive change on the world. So many people get caught up in, I have to work to make money, I have to do this, I have to do that, and they lose the joy of life. When we get to that place where we can really take time to stop and listen to the things that are calling us and make that the work that we do, then everything changes. Then work doesn't become work, it becomes joy, and we end up living the lives that we should live in the fullness that we should live them in, because we're really doing what, we're called to do. It's incredible.
Well, I think there were several factors in some of my decisions. I mean, I had really started to devote myself to the spiritual path at that time, a little bit prior to that. And some of the reason was that I had been on the journey. Both of my parents had died recently in that time, but over a 6-year period. And that relatively young for somebody to, I mean, not as young as some people when they lose their parents, but, and I was just very interested in what else there was. I mean, I had been all my life. I'd delved into all kinds of spiritual traditions and so on. So that really wasn't surprising. But now I was starting to really look at it more and more. And interestingly, I was in corporate America. I'd been employed by corporate America, and then I went as a freelance consultant for corporate America in communications. So I really did know that world. I enjoyed that world. I mean, when a lot of my friends who were in spiritual pursuits were like, "Oh, how can you stand it?" It didn't bother me. I met lots of great people in it. I think, there's people are people, and you just sometimes I offered people another alternative. I mean, people would look at me and they'd say, "Well, how do you do that?" or "What's that?" or they would come up to me with the stories they couldn't tell anyone else. Like, I mean, I had people ask me, "Do you see dead people?" I mean, in corporate America, or when 9/11 happened, I'll never forget, I had an executive literally just about breaking down in tears on the phone call with me because he couldn't talk to anybody else about it. So, I mean, you can have those experiences almost anywhere. But I spent these 10 years listening in this meditation practice to the sounds, and over that 10-year period, and I give this information so if people have some experience with hearing sounds themselves or sound energy in any fashion, you might want to explore it in a new way too. So what I did was listen. So I would sit in a chair and listen. I'd meditate, I'd listen. And sometimes the sounds would come and sometimes they didn't. But over that period of time, the sounds changed. And they changed into what I call spheres instead of this linear sound that would happen to me. And it was very bell-like. Now, interestingly, it wasn't like the bowls that I sound, bell-like sound, the metal bowls. It actually, that's another part of the story. It came later when I met these particular crystal bowls, but just to find that the sound would metamorphose, I didn't expect that either. That truly surprised me. I don't necessarily think you need to concentrate on something like sound for a spiritual practice, or that sound is the only thing to work with. I mean, I think anything that allows you to get quiet, relax, tune in, that's all I'm suggesting to anyone.
I know I had a conversation yesterday. One of the interviews that I did was with Jean Tyndall, who is also was at Victory of Light, and she does crystals and does crystal grids. And we had talked about that, and that was one of the big things that came up, was that it really is what resonates with you, right? What is it that's going to help you focus that energy and everything to get to the place that you need to be? And whether it's sound energy, whether it's, crystal energy, whether it's whatever it is, it's what resonates with you. It's what's going to help you move forward on your path and get to the places that you need to be. And I think that, at times there are all kinds of things that we go through, is what is attracting us at that moment.
Absolutely. I think that's true.
Yeah, as we listen to that, we get further down the path. And then there may be something else that all of a sudden is, oh my God, that's the thing. And we need to move towards that. It's always taking that time to listen to the messages that are being sent to us so that we can develop and continue moving forward and grow. I watch so many people because I coach people, and I watch people that are just stuck. And usually it's not that they're stuck, it's that they're not listening anymore. They've taken that time to stop listening to all the messages that are around them for whatever reason, if they're dealing with some old pain or whatever, but they just stop listening to the obvious signs that are right in front of them telling them to move forward. While we were at Victory of Light, I want to in April last time. I met Ken, and I actually did an interview with him as well. But I met him, and he stopped me and said, "Hey," he said, "I've seen you guys all weekend walking around here, me and Caitlin," and he said, "I just need to tell you something." And I was like, "Okay, go ahead." And he said, "So when are you going to ask her?" And so, of course, now she's my fiance. And so we saw him this last time, and he looks at me and he says, "Jeff, you are right at the edge. Why are you stopping?" And I'm like, "Oh." And he was dead on, right? So I'm just like, okay, there are just those times in our life, and all of us are included in that. We're all in this human experience together, and we just need to listen to the things that are being told to us, whether it's hearing music or a really big sign in front of you saying, "Hey, it's time to go."
Well, the other part of listening too, I mean, this was the part that was really interesting to me, was when these sounds came, and they were so melodic and so beautiful. I was just entranced with them, and I really wanted to sing back to them, but I just didn't trust my voice. I couldn't sing that high in some ways, and all, just lots of whatever. And I realized at one point I'm sitting there, and I'm just crying because they're so beautiful. And I got the sense from them that it didn't matter if I ever sung back to them. I was listening, and that was the most important thing. And I think that does elude us. It's a little different take on what you're saying, but so often we just don't make the time to listen. I think that's the other piece of this, is to be receptive to other people, situations, experiences, and such, and allow them in. We often are very active in our lives, and we're pushing forward, we're moving forward, and that sense of stillness also allows a receptivity. So listening, I think, is real important on a number of levels. So I'm just going to reinforce that point.
Yeah, and I think you're absolutely right. We have to take that time to get quiet, right? To get quiet in ourselves. Life is so fast paced now. It's constant stimulation all the time, whether it's our phone, the internet, the TV, whatever it is. There's just constant stimulation that we have, and taking some time to come back from that and really get grounded and get quiet so that we can hear those messages that are being sent to us, I think is just hugely important. There was something else I was going to say with that, and I lost it.
Well, let me jump in then, because the part that's kind of interesting was these sounds that I was hearing. I knew they weren't like the metal bowls I was, working with, and now I had several metal bowls. One of the ironies, and I'll just put this into, is that there's just things that happen, as I think anybody would recognize as they go along, and you just don't have control. I mean, we all want to think we have more control than we do, but we don't. And in this pursuit of the bowls, a friend knew that I wanted, to find some other really nice bowls. That was my goal, was to find a couple more nice bowls. And she looked at me and she said, there's a person, and literally this person lived, it was a couple. They lived like, I'd say 5 miles from where I was living at the time. And they had old bowls, antique bowls from India, a monastery there. And I was just like, I just almost just started laughing, because it was like, why would somebody have old bowls 5 miles from me? And this was repeated in my life with someone who's become a good friend. When she decided she wanted a singing bowl for her birthday, and here she is living in Cleveland, Ohio, which is where I was at the time. And she said, the last thing in the world I thought was that anybody would have singing bowls in Cleveland, Ohio. And I lived probably 3 miles from where she lived. So, I mean, it can just keep turning around of how things go. But so synchronicities and such are fun.
Exactly. So it's really funny. I'm writing an article also for the magazine, and hopefully I'll have it finished today. But I'm writing an article about Victory of Light, and the article is all about synchronicity. It's one of those magical places where you go in there and there is just synchronicity everywhere, right? There are so many things that are being drawn, and you're being drawn to that specific moment in time to talk to this specific person about this specific thing. It is unbelievable the amount of synchronicity I had when I was there this, a week and a half ago. The one thing that I was going to say before was that as we're taking that time to get quiet, right, and really listen, I think the next step in that, and it's exactly what you're doing now, is sharing that with everybody else, right? Is giving that to other people, because I think it's not enough. I think, just getting quiet and listening is only part of the equation. It's when we start taking what we're hearing and what we're learning and how we're growing and giving that to other people so that they can experience that, so they can find, transformation there, find healing there, find quiet there. As they find those things, that's really when our gifts are being used and when we continue and finish that circle. I think that is really an important part of the equation. I don't think it ever ends until we get to that place where we're giving it to other people.
Mm-hmm. I think, though, I always remember that St. Francis made a really wonderful statement. Somebody said, well, why don't you preach more? And he said, I'm always preaching. I just don't always talk. And I think that that's a very valuable thing, is that it really should be in our lives. It's not a question of what we say about certain things or any of that. It's just how do we live in this world? And are we the place of stillness for someone else? Are we the place of inspiration for someone else? And but we don't always have to be promoting ourselves or whatever. So I'll just go on a little bit more about the journey of how I ended up with all of what I believe is resounding joy these days. I probably should throw in things like I was definitely into crystals after a friend of mine said, I thought crystals were too woo-woo and I was not into crystals. And they said, I was a jeweler at the time. She said, but you make jewelry. And I was like, oh, yeah. And I was a person who always brought stones back from places I visited. Oh, and I was the kid with the gravel driveway. Totally busted on this one. And then I realized that I was getting the resonance from crystals. And that was important to me, about this feeling of sound. I think that a lot, or resonance or frequency, whatever you want to call it, doesn't really matter. But I think that people also have the opportunity to tune into sound on more levels than I think we think of. We believe sound to be what we hear through our ears. And yet most of us have had the experience of vibration in our bodies. If it's only from a jackhammer, but that sense of vibration. And that's one of the things why I love with the bowls themselves, people holding the bowl in their hand and learning how to play it, because almost everybody's surprised. Oh my gosh, the feeling's in the palm of my hand, and oh, it's going up my arm. And I'll apply bowls to people's bodies and they'll be like, wow, I didn't know it would do that. So, sound and vibration is way more than what we hear. So I'd like people to either explore that a little bit for themselves at some point, whenever they want to, or just realize that we can tune into things a little bit more than we might mentally think about them. So.
Yeah, for sure. I always think it's incredible when you do that, the feeling, that vibration that you get. Actually, before we got on this call, I was busy playing with my bowl and I was doing that whole thing. Now I'm interested. There's all kinds of different bowls. You have the metal ones like this one here. And then you have crystal bowls, which I have not had the pleasure of playing with up until this point. But so the differences between the two.
Sure. So the evolution of the bowls were they went from the metal and they emerged into the quartz crystal, which most people are familiar with. The white, they're usually frosted white bowls that get very large. And the story is that those were used to generate quartz crystals for the computer industry. I don't know if that is true or not, but I've heard that on several occasions. So that vibration is extremely strong. The walls of those bowls are about a 1/4 inch thick, and it's very strong. The bowls that I play publicly are called crystal tones bowls, and those bowls are a mixture of quartz plus a gem material like diamond, ruby, emerald, semi-precious stone like citrine, carnelian, whatever, or metals. They also incorporate indium, which is a metal, iron. I'm sure they do copper now, though I don't know that for sure. But so they're made of a mixture of at least one other and as many as 3 other components in the bowls. For me, those bowls, what was ironic was that, so the metal bowls were never the sounds I heard. A friend of mine goes out to Mount Shasta, comes back, and she'd gotten a crystal at this place that I directed her to, but she comes back from that shop and says to me, you've got to go out there. You got to see these bowls they've got. And I'm like, yeah, okay, sometime. And I've been meaning to get out there. So I finally get out to Mount Shasta, and I meet these crystal bowls, and they're just gorgeous. I mean, the sound's gorgeous and everything else. And I'm like, whoa, this is pretty cool. But the woman who could show me anything wasn't available in the 2-3 days I was there. Anyway, I end up getting crystals only that time, and I move on. But she comes out, the woman in the shop comes out while I'm there, and she plays a bowl, and the experience was like unbelievable. So I go away. I go to the Tucson Gem Show about 6 months later in Tucson, and this woman is there with the bowls. I'm like, okay, I don't need a bigger sign than that. I'm buying a bowl. And it was magical, and I really realized then that the sounds I'd been hearing were like the sounds of these bowls. So it was the material that was different, which I found interesting. That was what I heard. And I just fell in love with them. It took me another, I mean, the bowls are incredibly expensive. It took me another 5 months, and ironically, the end of a big gig with a corporate client to send me back out to Mount Shasta, both for the mountain, which is, I recommend anyone to go visit, and as well as the bowls. That was really, and then that was my commitment. I mean, I bought 3 bowls, several $1,000s, came home 2 weeks later. I knew I needed 3 more. I mean, it just was like, and I knew I had to play them. I mean, my friend, we'd been sitting there before the woman came in to play for us that evening when I was back again in May of that year. And she said, you got to buy these bowls and you have to bring them back to Cleveland. And at that time I was ready to leave Cleveland, but nope, I wasn't ready to leave Cleveland. I needed to continue to play there for another 10 years. So it was very magical. Those bowls really speak to me. I mean, anytime I play them, when people see me playing them, there's just a relationship between their sounds and myself and the audience. I think a lot of times the audience doesn't realize that it's really as much them as me with the bowls. I mean, there's no, I want to say there's no separation. I never know when I play which is going to be the first bowl I play. I literally don't. And I don't know what bowls it's going to be the second one or the third one. But I call them sound mandalas. There's combinations, melodies that I know by heart that sometimes once I start playing one, another one will begin or whatever, and then we'll move into the sound mandala, and sometimes it'll be something completely different. I mean, I've been stunned in certain programs or sessions when I'm doing them. I'll never forget, I was in a yoga studio several years ago, and this one mandala showed up, and I was like, no, I don't know what's going to happen. You know, I'm literally like doing this fight resistance, and they're like, no, you got to play this. And I'm like, I mean, I'm in the midst of this. Everybody's out, you know, I got to keep going. And they're like, no, you just play this. And I was like, okay. And literally it was like this incredible gateway opening. I mean, everybody in the room felt it. I could feel it. I knew what was going on then. And that has happened on more than one occasion. Another time it happened was the day before I was to play for a breast cancer survivor group. This melody came in that's very lyrical, very soothing, sort of a lullaby even in effect. And I was like stunned. It was so full of love. And I played it for them and said, this one's for you. And they were like, wow. So stuff like that happens.
So there's it's an interesting experience that, you know, people talk about, especially in the kind of in the sports community, because I do long, crazy endurance events, right? And you get to that place where they talk about flow, right? And you're
Right.
in that specific moment. You are fully engaged in that, and you get to that moment where everything is perfect. And it goes, and part of that is really listening and being open and receptive to doing that, and doing what completely comes naturally when you get to that place. And flow can happen in anything. It can happen, when you're playing music. Lots of musicians experience that when they're
Right.
playing. They get so wrapped up into the emotion of that they're just going. They're not thinking anymore. They're just doing. And the same thing happens in sports. It happens in business when people are really just in the moment. It's incredible. You find that that's when people break world records, when they do these incredible things that all of us are like, how in the hell did you get that done? But it's that moment, that flow state that we get into where we're just fully engaged. When I do some of those events, I have no choice but to get there.
Right.
Like I get into that moment, because there's no other way to continue to push forward unless I'm listening and receiving and right in the moment. It's really unique. It's neat when you see that and you can experience that, and just everything else falls away, and it is just what it is. And that's when people get the most benefit. But you're right, it is. It's a it is the totality of energy. Like whenever I'm in a room and I'm talking to people, or I'm up on a stage speaking, it is that I am right there. It is the energy of the people I'm talking to. It's my energy all coming together that makes it incredible. It's not the words that I'm saying. It is the energies of all the people that bring transformation. So, yeah. Anyway.
Oh yeah, no, it's very true. I think the other interesting thing with the bowls is, and people are always surprised by this, and it doesn't matter if it's a crystal bowl or a metal bowl, Himalayan bowl. When I play a bowl and I hand it to you, it may sound very different when you start playing it. There really is a resonance. There's a relationship between you and the bowl, and what's going to come out of it, and what's going to happen. And when I play these programs, I have 12 crystal bowls in front of me and several metal bowls with me. Those bowls can sound different depending on the audience, and it's pretty interesting to me as the person who's playing. Sometimes I know it's all. I mean, I have to be aware of my own sensibility and energy and all that, but it's also, there's just this real sensibility that's a communal thing. I think this is when we get into that state where there really is a more of a oneness. I think the little I goes away, and the bigger quote, the true I comes out, the true self comes out, and we can just ignore the rest of it because it's pretty trivial in the scheme of things. Yeah, I always, and people, they'll see me smiling when I'm playing, and they'll ask me, do I go into trance? Because that's the state of the playing the bowls usually induces a trance for people. And I mean, that happens to me. I mean, there's a point where I have to maintain a certain level of standard consciousness, I'll call it, in order to play and not just go off and stop playing, or do something crazy or something, break a bowl or something. I don't know, but it's very interesting to watch even my own state as I'm playing and what's going on. So I really, if you haven't tried a bowl before, I'd say, come to an expo like Victory of Light or something, and just have the experience of playing one. It's just fun. I mean, if nothing else, it allows you to just do something different. I have a lot of people come up to my booths in these expos just to experience it. I mean, I encourage them. I say, you want to play one? I mean, it's free. Come on over. And, I can't do it. It never works for me. And I'm like, I have had 100% success rate in getting people to play bowls. So it's pretty fun to just let people have at it and have that experience. I mean, most people will pick up a crystal. Lots of people have had readings with people, whether it's from tarot or something else, but try a bowl, just see what happens.
So you mentioned this, and your talk there at Victory of Light was it was entitled "Singing Bowls Receptivity." Receptivity. So word. I don't know why it was hard for me to say, but you just talked about that a little bit about the whole inducing a trance state, and I think that's part of it, getting into that place where you can slow everything down and you can get very meditative. And I think the bowls a lot of times support that melody that they play really allows you to slow things down and to just listen. So yeah, talk a little bit about that.
Sure. Well, actually, there's now scientific knowledge about what's happening with that, and it's partly the drone sense. I mean, this happens in drum circles too. This repetition of sound. In usual states, we're in the beta state, which is we're list making and we're trying to think of what do I have to do next. It's a very active state of mind, and we consider that our reality. But the next state, the next brainwave state. So these are brainwave states that scientists have measured. They know, what level they're at, et cetera. The next brainwave state is the alpha state. And this is very much like that athletic state of in the zone. It's the creative state, people who are writers or painters or musicians, whatever, you get into this state and you think, wow, it's just flowing. It's just coming to me. And so that's the alpha brainwave state. And that's a wonderful place to be. The next state is the the theta state. I always wish they would have done these in the Greek alphabet way, but they don't. So the next one is theta, and this is the first state of dreaming or sleep really. And so like the monks and other shamans and so on all wanted to move into these quote altered states where they could really start experiencing other levels of consciousness or other realms or whatever it might be. So the theta state starts to get you into that. But the delta wave state, which many people have heard of, the delta wave is rapid eye movement in sleep, where you really are in deep sleep and you're not conscious any longer of the reality we think of as real. And this is a state where lots of things can happen. It's really important that people get that level of sleep and such, because that's what repairs us. That's what, takes care of our bodies and our minds and our emotions and all kinds of things. So, these are all measurable. And the idea with the bowls is that you move from one state progressively into another. And, I think the monks used it to transform their consciousness into those different states. It's interesting. The other one is gamma wave, which is when people can lift cars off of, other people and things like that. But that's an entirely different thing. And I'm not sure how that gets induced to other than pure adrenaline and such. Yeah. But these others can be induced by drone sound, by sound. So
I worked with a company for a while because, being an athlete and doing extreme sports, recovery is a big deal to me, right? I have to recover. I have to be able to sleep and get good quality sleep so my body repairs itself, or just injuries mount up, right? So I was working with a company called REM Fit for a while, and they have a sleep tracker, and I used to wear it every night. What I found is when I go to sleep, this is incredible to me. When I go to sleep, I sleep about 5 or 6, maybe 6 or 7 hours a night. Usually, at the time, it was more like 5 or 6. But when I sleep, it takes me about 5 minutes to fall asleep, and then I drop straight into deep sleep. I don't even hang out where I'm dreaming and all that stuff. I drop straight into deep sleep. I stay there consistently for 4 to 5 hours, and then within 5 minutes, I'm completely awake again. It's crazy. I go down, cross, and up, and it is why I can sleep shorter periods and get just as much rest and be recovered faster than other people, because most people, their wave is like mountains. They're going up and down and they hear every noise and they're not fully asleep. But man, I drop straight into deep sleep and I'm there forever. And it really does help me to function better, because the quality of sleep that I get every single night is better than what most people get in an entire week. And I'm
Yeah.
like, wow. So that is one of the reasons why I can perform at such a higher level than a lot of other people without breaking down. And I've done it for 20 plus years now. But it's amazing how that affects you. And so for a while, I was doing what is that? I would listen to those different sounds and different music to really induce some of those brain waves. And it's interesting. And some of that is, very reminiscent of the bowls, right? Some of the
Right.
tones that they play in the background to induce those different things. So directly related to what you're talking about, what do they call that? They call that, I forget what the binaural beats
Oh yeah,
is.
binaural beats. Yeah,
Yeah,
right, right.
that
Yeah,
they
no,
talk.
they're trying to make the left and right hemisphere, yeah, transfer information and such. Yeah, yeah. It's pretty funny because I've said to people when I start playing, I usually say to the audience, I say, I'm probably the only performer who's going to say to you, if you fall asleep during my performance, I'll be gratified. That's true. It's true. And people, people all laugh. They say, "Oh, yeah, right, right, right." And but they do, and then they're like, "Whoa, wait a minute! I shouldn't be falling asleep." And I'm like, "No, I'm really grateful." I played recently here in North Carolina um, for a woman who's. It was a celebration for her, and she invited all kinds of people. She said, some of these people are going to find the bowls kind of weird. And she said, "But I just want you to play." Well, her son was there who was going to find the bowls a little weird, but he sat down, and afterwards he went up and he said, "Mom, I gotta tell you, I was out in about 5 or 10 minutes, and I needed that so badly. It's been such a hectic time at work and this that." He said, "I'm no longer a skeptic." I'm like, "That's good. That's good." So yeah,
Wow.
they just relax people. Again, I think the sound is activating on the body as well as the mind. I've had lots of people just say, their whole body felt relaxed, not just the noise in their head going away, the monkey chatter and such. And that is true. We just don't. I mean, a lot of us just don't offer ourselves an opportunity to relax. So
Yeah. So I think the I've got a friend of mine here in Cincinnati. She was actually at Victory Light too, but she also does sound bowl healing. So she'll place the bowls on different places on the body, and I think it's really interesting. Very I think the vibration uh, gets really deep into that part of the body. I think that's really interesting. But I also think there's a lot of focusing of intention that's going on in that specific area because of the vibration and that intention of playing. I think it's very interesting. Yesterday talking to Gene, we talked about crystal grids, and they do a very similar thing. They place them on the body and use that to focus the energy into that place and into the area that they're working on. So I think it's interesting. But I think with the bowls, you get more than just the focused energy of the crystals and the energy and the properties that they have. You also get the sound that goes into your ears that calms you. You get the vibration that goes. So it's really interesting. It really is what resonates with you, what's going to work for you.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I certainly fooled around with a lot of things. I mean, I had bowls initially, the older bowls, but I also was into tuning forks for a while. I think and I think tuning forks can be very effective too. I probably was more attracted to the bowls in the end for several reasons. One was the tradition is very long. I mean, it's both in the Buddhist tradition as well as the Hindu tradition. Um, there's additional bowls that are made in China, so I'm sure that, Shinto, Confucius, I'm sure there's all kinds of, other traditions that use bowls. Um, but I also liked, so I like that sense because I do feel that the bowls really have a communication process or power, or whatever, with the universe, literally with intergalactic kind of thing. I mean, I came to believe that the sounds I heard, because not as soon, but 3 weeks after I purchased all these very expensive bowls, I stopped hearing the melodies I'd been hearing, very distinct, these bell-like melodies, and started having the shimmer of a cloud or mist or something around me of sound. And I was like, what? And I now believe that that shimmer you get with gongs is sort of a similar to what I was experiencing then. And the sounds continue to change. I mean, they've changed again. They actually these days aren't as prevalent to me outside. Like I don't hear them as much. I sense them more internally, I believe. But it's been a very interesting transformation. And I actually miss hearing some of the melodies. But I guess that was the time, and now is a different time. But so I think that the sound can change for people, and that quality of sound that the bowls create for me was what has been very, very important. I find it very female too. I find a bowl shape is very feminine. I like that sense of it. I think it's a good incorporation of things. And the sense that the different metals in the bowls, I mean, that's been another big thing of me, this whole communication with the galaxies and stuff. There's the thing about the 7 metals and the different planets and such. But people who have really worked with the bowls a long time and are very knowledgeable say there's more metals than just 7 in many of the old bowls. And each metal resonates to a different musical pitch, so it creates a more complex bowl. I had a very large bowl at the expo that you might have played with that just had a complexity of sound that's unbelievable. And the same thing I think is true of the crystal tones bowls, because they have more than one metal or semi-precious stone or precious stone in them. I think they have multiple notes that come out of them that have an effect. So I really like that quality about the bowls as well. So what was their composition, and how does that shift on things? So that's just another piece of it all.
When we talk about the different tones and things like that, there's lots of research talk about physics and all these things, and that everything is at a vibrational level. Everything that we have, everything that we are is vibrating at some level. So being able to tap into that with similar vibrations, and I always think of this when I go and I pick up a bowl and I'm listening to it to see if it resonates with me. It seems to me anyway, in my mind, is that when that happens, it's the vibration that's most similar to my own, right? So I'm hearing that and it's being reflected back at me, and that's what I'm attracted to, because it's very similar to the same vibration that I'm at. So I think that as that changes and we raise our level of vibration, I think some of what we're attracted to changes.
I agree. Yeah.
So
I think one of the funniest things, I don't know, funny is maybe not the right word, but anyway, people come up to me and they want a bowl with, say, an F note or a D note or whatever the note is. And often they're using there's a Vedic system of a note per chakra. So in the Vedic system, that's the Hindu system, the notes go C for root chakra, D for reproductive organs, E for solar plexus, F for heart, G for throat, A for third eye, and B for crown. It took me a long time to realize it was C, D, E, F, G. I had to be really mental about it. But anyway, so that's the Vedic system. But the Tibetan system is different. So it's not like it's always, what you think it is. The other thing is I try to label my bowls with what the fundamental note is. But as I warn people, I'm using a guitar tuner to get the best note I can out of it. And a lot of times these bowls have more than one, quote, note. And so like the guitar tuner will start out at, let's say it's F. It'll start out at F, it'll go to G, it'll go to C, it'll go to A, it'll come back to F, or maybe it won't come back to F, it'll rest at something else. I just have to do my best at what I think the primary fundamental note is. And I say this to people. I say, I've got F labeled on this bowl, but I bet if I pull out my guitar tuner, you're going to see multiple notes in it. And the other thing is you should choose a bowl that resonates with you, and the bowl will find you. And that is my big mantra is, people come worried that they're not going to choose the right bowl or what bowl or this, that, or the other thing. And I say, don't worry, the bowl's going to find you. I've seen so many people step up and, go through bowl after bowl, and I'll just watch them and I'll go, oh yeah, that's the one. And eventually that's usually the one they come back to say, I think I'll take this one. I'm like, oh, good. I think that's really a great choice. I really don't try to influence people. I had a good friend who did this very thing. She brought another friend and to buy bowls, and she picked up this bowl and she really liked it, but she was more concentrated on her friend getting a bowl. She left that day, and she was at another show I was at 2 weeks later, picked up several bowls, picked up this bowl and said, "Oh, this is it." And I'm like, yeah, that is it.
That's neat. It really is what resonates with you. So speaking of all that, we're going to wrap this up real quick here, but how does everybody find you?
Oh, okay. So I have a website, and it's the infamous www and then re-soundingjoy.com. It's the hyphen that makes the difference. I think otherwise you'll get a choral group in California. You can also plug in my name, Kathleen with a K, Calby, C-A-L-B-Y, to YouTube, and you'll get a couple of parts of that, little performances that you can actually see me playing the bowls.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for taking time out of your day to talk with us.
Yeah.
And but yeah, I love what you're doing. I always make sure to stop by and say hi every time I'm up there. So yeah, I look forward to seeing you in April. Well, if you're coming up, we talked about that you may not make the trip this next time. So we'll see what happens, but we will definitely stay in touch.
Okay, sounds great, Jeff. Thanks so much, and thanks